New York City just installed a democratic socialist mayor who promises to fix the housing crisis by, well, by challenging the law, freezing the market, and risking tens of billions of taxpayer dollars. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at a policy reset in New York City that is so dramatic it really has the entire financial capital of the country holding its breath. We're diving into the source material. We've got reports, financial analyses, and some sharp political critiques, all surrounding the new mayor, Zohran Mamdani, and his really radical new housing agenda. Mamdani's inauguration alone was a huge statement. He was sworn in using the Quran, that's a first for an NYC mayor, and he immediately promised to govern as a democratic socialist. He made it crystal clear he doesn't answer to, any billionaire or oligarch. That's the mindset he's bringing to City Hall. And then the moment he took office, the policy hammer just dropped. On his very first full day, he basically signaled a warpath against property owners.
Oh, absolutely.
He revoked most of his predecessor's executive orders and put a nationally recognized tenant organizer, Cea Weaver, in charge of a newly empowered Tenants Protection Office. It was a day one reset.
And this agenda is truly structural. I mean, it's designed to fundamentally shift the whole relationship between tenants and owners. Our sources really lay out two main pillars.
Okay, what are they?
First, a 4-year rent freeze for about 1 million rent-stabilized apartments. That's housing for, nearly 30% of the city's entire population.
A huge number.
A huge number. And second, a massive parallel plan to build 200,000 units of city-subsidized, union-built social housing.
So we're really not talking about minor reforms here. The analysis we've been reviewing, and this includes some deep critiques from a Rent Guidelines board member and the Manhattan Institute, it all suggests this socialist blueprint is an extremely dangerous financial gamble.
It is. It threatens to bankrupt the existing housing stock, and it creates a staggering amount of new public debt.
So what we really need to figure out today is, are these risks just theoretical, or is this policy actually built on a financial time bomb?
Well, let's start with that rent freeze, because the immediate, the quantifiable risk is to the homes that already exist. Mamdani's signature promise is 4 straight years of zero increases for those stabilized units. And what's fascinating here really is the existing fragility of the housing stock he's trying to protect. This isn't some thriving market sector.
Right.
Data shows that approximately 10% of the city's stabilized buildings, and we're talking about an enormous portfolio of older pre-war buildings, mostly in the outer boroughs, they already report that their operating costs meet or even exceed their rental income.
Wait a minute. If 10% are already on the financial brink, why is the mayor starting a war with landlords now? Wouldn't a temporary tax credit or maybe a subsidy be a less risky first step than just a blanket freeze?
Well, the policy justification is the immediate need for relief for working-class tenants. I mean, their incomes are flatlining while rents and costs just keep climbing. The socialist argument is that the housing supply is currently an inelastic market, meaning higher profits for landlords won't magically generate enough new supply to solve the crisis. And so the system has to be immediately constrained to prevent more displacement.
But the financial critique says that just ignores the basic math of owning a building, right?
It does. And remember, that 10% figure, that's 1 in 10 stabilized buildings. That's just operating costs. We're talking fuel, water, insurance, property taxes. It actually excludes debt service.
So it excludes the mortgage payments.
Exactly. The money owners use to pay their mortgages. So these buildings are already effectively running at a loss just on the basics.
Okay, let's really unpack this fiscal nightmare that the rent freeze could create. Essential costs for a landlord, like fuel, insurance, property taxes, they typically compound at, a 3% annual rate?
About that.
So if you impose 4 consecutive rent freezes, you're guaranteeing that for 4 straight years, income is totally flat, while expenses are rising by over 12%.
And that's when the downward spiral begins. When income can't cover routine expenses, owners resort to what critics call financial neglect. They defer essential repairs, they skip painting cycles, and most importantly, they fall behind on their property tax bills.
And once properties fall way behind on taxes, the city has to step in through this mechanism called in rem tax foreclosure.
That's where the city just acquires the title to the property because of the tax delinquency.
Right. And our sources are warning that 4 years of this financial squeeze could recreate a mass tax foreclosure crisis, sort of like what New York saw back in the 1980s, where the city inherited thousands of these dilapidated buildings.
And this is where the cost to you, the taxpayer, just becomes staggering. The sources estimate the city could be forced to acquire up to 100,000 distressed units.
100,000.
And because these buildings have gone through years of neglect-deferred maintenance, leaky roofs, crumbling infrastructure, the cost to fully rehabilitate just one neglected unit is calculated to be somewhere between $250,000 and $500,000.
Just think about that cost. $500,000 just to fix up an existing apartment that the city was forced to take over. So this potential forced acquisition, according to the analysis, it could consume up to half of Mamdani's entire proposed $100 billion housing construction budget.
And that is the ultimate policy paradox right there.
It is. This aggressive tenant protection, meant to help people right now, it risks triggering the financial collapse of existing properties, forcing the city to spend billions on bailouts money that was supposed to build brand new, affordable homes.
The social housing dream could stop before they build a single new unit.
Exactly. So we've established the existing housing stock could face a massive crisis from the freeze, but that's only half the story.
That's right. The other, and maybe even bigger, financial mountain is the cost of building the new social housing itself.
So let's talk about that.
Mamdani plans to build 200,000 units of city-subsidized, union-built housing. Now, to finance this, the city needs to issue a colossal amount of debt. We're talking $70 billion in new borrowing.
$70 billion. I mean, that amount is so huge, it can't be done without getting state permission first to raise the city's debt cap.
That's right.
It's like running up your credit card to the legal limit and then having to ask the state legislature for a massive one-time increase on the card.
And critics warned that this scale of borrowing isn't just a number on a page. It fundamentally risks, and this is a quote, starting other important uses of capital funds across the city.
What does that mean in practice?
Well, think about long-term projects. The MTA needs funding for transit resilience. The city needs billions for flood control and climate adaptation. Schools need modernization. Every dollar that goes to this $70 billion housing plan is a dollar potentially taken away from those vital competing needs.
And the fiscal pain keeps going because there's an ideological cost built directly into the construction process. Mamdani's pledge for all union labor on city-funded housing, that's a major sticking point for critics because it significantly inflates costs compared to private, non-union construction.
And this is framed by the mayor's allies as a commitment to high-quality prevailing wage jobs for New Yorkers. But the trade-off is, it's clear and it's measurable.
How measurable?
Staff at the city's Housing Preservation and Development Office, speaking anonymously to the analysts, they warned that this specific union mandate will raise housing production costs by 30% or more.
30%. That is a self-imposed inefficiency, and it's dictated by ideology. That one policy decision instantly evaporates at least 23% of the city's new construction budget overnight.
Right, you're paying more money to build fewer homes.
Exactly.
And that inefficiency is made even worse by the state's existing development rules. Specifically, this program, the 485X Mixed Income Housing Program. It's designed to incentivize housing construction.
But there's a catch.
There's a big catch. The rules for 485X mandate prevailing wages, those high union rates, and they kick in sharply once a development hits 99 units.
Ah, the classic 99-unit problem.
Precisely. This creates a powerful and what analysts call a perverse incentive. Developers who want to avoid that mandatory 30% cost increase will just shrink or split their projects to stay below that 99-unit threshold.
So the wage mandate actually restricts the volume of new housing supply. It limits the density and scale that you need to actually fix the crisis.
That's the argument.
So the city is fighting these twin economic battles. One is against the potential collapse of existing housing, and the second is against these astronomical, self-imposed costs of building new housing. So now let's get to the political disruption required to even get this rent freeze passed.
The primary roadblock to the rent freeze isn't financial data. It's the Rent Guidelines Board, the RGB. That's the body legally responsible for setting rent adjustments.
And the RGB is structured to be independent. It has 9 members, 2 tenant reps, 2 owner reps, and 5 public members. That balance is critical.
It is. But before leaving office, former Mayor Eric Adams, who was much less keen on rent freezes, he appointed 4 new members.
So he stacked the board.
He effectively secured a board majority that is skeptical of a freeze. This successfully blocks Mamdani's main policy agenda until at least January 1st, 2028. The board is essentially stacked against the new administration for 4 years.
And the clock is ticking?
It is, and Mamdani's made it clear he won't wait. He signaled he's willing to break precedent, saying his approach to power would be to actually utilize it.
He even brought up his political opponents, didn't he?
He did. He specifically noted that Republicans seem to have no limits in their imagination or how they want to use power, which implies he feels constrained by traditional legal decorum and that he plans to challenge it.
This sounds like a huge legal showdown waiting to happen. How can a mayor even overturn the appointments of his predecessor to what's supposed to be an independent body?
This raises an extremely important question, because a mayor trying to remove these public board members before their term is up is completely unprecedented in the board's history. The analysts warned the mayor would be, and I'm quoting, swimming in uncharted legal waters.
So what are his options? What are the paths he could take?
He really faces 2 very difficult legal paths. The first is to challenge the members' qualifications, arguing they lack the impartiality or expertise required.
Has that worked before?
Not really. Courts have previously rejected arguments that RGB members need to have absolute impartiality, so that avenue, it's tough. The legal bar is pretty low.
So if qualifications fail, what about just removing them directly, the for-cause path?
That's the second and much harder path. The law allows removal only for good cause. And we should be clear what that means legally. Historically, good cause means substantial misconduct, things like incompetency, corruption, or malfeasance.
Basically, they committed a crime or totally messed up their job.
Right. It does not traditionally include mere policy disagreements. A mayor can't just fire someone because they voted against a rent freeze. Legal analysts suggest any attempt to do that would just get struck down in court.
And if he tries to avoid that legal fight by just changing the rules through the city council, there's a huge political risk there, too.
A massive one. Attempting a legislative rewrite requires the city council's cooperation. And the analysts warned this could backfire dramatically. Instead of just giving the mayor the power he wants, the council might seize the opportunity to permanently insert itself into the appointment process.
Which would end up reducing future mayoral control over the board.
Exactly. To prevent any one mayor from ever having too much power again.
So this entire administration, from day one, it's really a great gamble. Mamdani isn't pursuing minor reforms. He's attempting a radical structural intervention, and it's built on massive new debt, $70 billion or more, and confrontational executive action.
And the conservative critique really zeroes in on the unintended consequences. They argue his aggressive protection of tenants through this rent freeze risks triggering the widespread financial failure of 10% of the existing rent-stabilized properties.
Which, ironically, would force the city to divert billions of dollars meant for new construction into just bailing out old, neglected buildings.
Right. And at the same time, the promise of 200,000 affordable new homes is undermined by a high-cost labor mandate that jacks up production costs by 30%, limiting the actual supply that can be delivered.
It's a fundamental conflict, isn't it? A commitment to high-wage labor versus the need to deliver the maximum number of homes.
It is. And Mamdani's plan to fund this whole socialist agenda, it relies on increasing taxes on millionaires. But given the economic risks, the potential collapse of existing housing stock, the unprecedented new public debt, and the legal challenges to property owners, the real question for every New Yorker is this. Will the city's bold financial blueprint inspire a new economic vitality and shared prosperity? Or will the sheer scale of the financial risk just accelerate the capital flight his administration claims it doesn't fear? That's a lesson New York will be learning potentially at great cost over the next 4 years.